Hello friends, and welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, my name is Kailin and I post videos mainly about eating disorder recovery and intuitive eating, and I post new videos every single week. So if that's something that you're interested in, I would love for you to click onto that subscribe button down below and become part of our little family. But for today's video, we are going to be talking about something that is extremely requested, which is bloating. We're going to be talking about bloating in general, what it is, the discourse around bloating, both online and in real life, as well as bloating in the context of eating disorder recovery. In this video, I'm going to be talking from my own experience, my own perspective, as well as research and things that I've read online. But if you are experiencing painful bloating, then please speak to a medical professional. First things first, I want to start off this video by saying that most bloating is very natural and very normal, and people bloat for so many different reasons. And some of these reasons are going to be discussed in this video. Bloating can occur for medical reasons, for example, somebody who has IBS. If you are a person who has a period during your menstruation cycle, after eating, it is very normal to bloat. During eating disorder recovery, etc. There are so many different reasons. However, even though there are plenty of different reasons for bloating, it never has to be explained. You don't need an explanation for taking up space. You don't need an explanation for not having a flat stomach. You don't need an explanation for having a stomach in the first place. You don't have to explain your body to anybody ever at any point in time. Something that I think is very problematic when it comes to bloating and gives so many people, especially young people, a very warped perspective around bloating is the kind of discourse that I see online. I've seen people who call themselves fitness coaches who say that you should never bloat throughout the day at all. And it drives me crazy. It truly does, because bodies are meant to shift and change, whether that is hormonal changes, whether that is from exercise, whether that is just from the food or water that you've drank or you've consumed. Your body is not meant to be a stable thing or at a stable image all day. I am going to promise you that that is impossible. It doesn't exist. So if that's what you were looking for, and if you're looking for a video that's going to talk about, all of the ways that you can stop bloating, that's not what this video is about, because bloating is normal, and I'm going to explain why, and I'm going to explain for some things that we might want to flag. But something that I do see online all the time, which is definitely causing this unsureness when it comes to bloating and for people to be very paranoid about it, it's this idea that stomachs are not meant to have any sort of shape to them and that you're not meant to bloat. Sometimes what people describe as bloating, or when they're looking at their stomach and they're describing it in certain ways and saying that they're bloated, sometimes it's just the existence of a stomach. That's it. Somebody can look bloated and that could just be their stomach and their shape, and there is nothing wrong with that. And so let's go into this idea a little bit more and explore some feelings that people tend to have around bloating in the first place. So a discourse around bloating that I see very, very often is people trying to say that they are not fat, or don't worry, I'm not fat, I'm just bloated, or I'm not 9 months pregnant, this is just my bloat. We see that kind of discourse all over social media, especially on TikTok, where people come up with these kind of body checking trends, which that's a video for another time. I do not have time today to open that can of worms and talk about purposeful body checking online. So I think that a lot of people use this idea of being bloated just as a cover to not admit that they have a stomach, or that their stomach extends, or that they have fat on their bodies, because we are human and we are meant to have fat and our bodies are meant to change, and that is beautiful and okay. And I think that a lot of people find reassurance in this, right? If they describe their body or their stomach as bloated, it kind of pulls themselves away from potentially just admitting that they have stomach fat in the first place, which I think many people struggle to admit or understand is okay. And it's almost as a way that somebody can accept the shape of their body, right? It's this idea that bloating goes away, so my stomach looks this way because I am bloated, and therefore it implies that the look that your stomach currently has, at least it will go away soon because it's not actually you. And we also see the same kind of rhetoric when people are talking about the lower part of their stomach, that belly pouch that people talk about all the time. And online, we see people who are preaching body positivity, usually white, thin women who are not a part of the movement at all. I do not consider myself a body positivity creator either. I've made that very clear on all of my platforms, or I've tried to. But we do see a lot of these women basically pointing to that lower belly pouch and saying it's nothing to be ashamed of. It's just your uterus that is sticking out. What if it's fat? Should we then be ashamed of it? Absolutely not. Absolutely not. And just like that kind of statement really excuses your body for looking a certain way, right? You have a reason why it looks that way. There are many people whose bodies, that's just what they look like. Myself being one of them. If I stand up right now and show you my stomach, I pull down my jeans, this bump here is not my uterus, this is fat. And that's okay. Anyway, the whole point at what I'm getting at is that I don't want us to have conditional acceptance. So I don't want us to accept our bloat just because it's bloating and it will go away. I don't want us to accept our lower belly pouch because it is our uterus. I want us to accept our body in all of its fluctuations and changes and to stop giving an explanation for why we look the way we do. And we do this all the time. This is a quick side note, but so many times, especially on YouTube, people will turn on their camera and they'll be like, oh, I'm so sorry for what I look like today. Who are you apologizing to? No more apologizing for taking up space, for being who you are, for showing up how you show up. No, okay? Okay, this aside, people tend to conflate bloating with loose skin or with fat or whatever it might be. And one of the most Googled searches is how to get rid of bloating. And the articles that come up, I swear to God, it was like a peanut wrote it. It's just, it does not make any sense. And it's very, very damaging. There are so many harmful tips that are given, and the tips are just disordered thoughts. That's it. And the thing that I'm going to tell you that you're probably not going to want to hear is that bloating doesn't need to be avoided, especially if your bloating is not painful. If you're just bloating, maybe your pants get a little bit tighter, maybe you're seeing a little bit of change in your shape. There is nothing that you should be trying to do to prevent that, because bloating is just another stage that your body reaches throughout the day. And again, we're not talking about painful bloating, we are just talking about bloating and change in general. There are literally ridiculous things online. Ridiculous from rubbing specific essential oils on your skin, which I have nothing against essential oils, I think they are wonderful, but they're not going to change the structure of your body. They're not going to change the bloat or gas buildup in your stomach. And some health sites even recommend things like laxatives. And I want to say that there is a huge difference when we are giving advice for people who are experiencing bloating just on a day-to-day basis versus people who experience bloating in specific circumstances. So because of digestive issues like IBS or lactose intolerance, or for people who have chronic constipation. You should not be using laxatives by any means unless a doctor tells you to. You should not be going online, looking at how to get rid of bloating and using laxatives. And if you've done that before, it's okay. But by using those products without having any kind of condition, without having any kind of pain, anything like that, just because of these suggestions online, the reason that we are doing that is just to appear thinner. We are not trying to alleviate any pain or bloat. What we are actually trying to do is just change the way that we usually appear to other people. And as a creator myself, I definitely get a lot of emails when it comes for, brands and sponsorships and everything like that. And there are so many companies who want to sell you whatever it is, anything. They want to sell you anything. The amount of laxative companies that have reached out to me and anti-bloating serums and all of this total bullshit, it's insane. It's as if they haven't clicked my page at all. But that aside, I just want to say that I know how inescapable it is, and it's everywhere. So when it's everywhere, it seems very consumable, and it also seems very normalized and okay. But just because somebody is using a specific product for their bloating to appear thinner or whatever it might be, does not mean that you need it. And again, I'm going to reiterate, do not buy any supplements from anywhere when it comes to bloating and digestion or whatever it might be, without consulting a medical practitioner. The only form of bloating that you should be going to go see a doctor about is if it is painful. If you have painful and consistent bloating, then please go talk to somebody. But if your bloating is just standard throughout the day, or you feel a little bit full, or even a little bit gassy or something like that, it's normal. Now let's talk about bloating in recovery. This is so normal. And it's normal for so many different reasons. I think that people experience the most bloating when they have dealt with some kind of restriction when it comes to their eating disorder or disordered eating habits. Does that mean that you have to have a restrictive background in order to experience painful bloating or bloating in general? Absolutely not, but it is a lot more common. And bloating is a very complicated topic within the recovery community because the circumstances for pushing through painful bloating is not so much the same as just somebody who has never experienced dieting or restriction or anything in the past. So there are actually several reasons as to why we would be experiencing painful bloating or bloating in recovery. But for one, if you've been under eating for a specific amount of time or going through binge restrict cycles, your body needs time to learn to trust you, and it also needs time to adapt to a more normalized schedule or new schedule in general. If you are also somebody who is working on weight restoration, you will also experience a lot more bloating. Not only are we introducing more foods, but we are introducing more food in general. There's a chance that we'll be eating at different times than typically what we're used to, especially if we are trying to break food rules. So if you've ever fasted in the past, or if you've ever only eaten at specific times and you're actively breaking those rules, there's a chance that bloating will happen there. Again, it's sort of like an irregularity to your schedule. It's something that you're not used to, but not only are you not used to it, your body also needs some time to adjust. But I also know from experience, from the messages that I get through my DM requests all of the time, that bloating is something that many people really struggle with mentally, especially during recovery. And so oftentimes people do not want to follow through with their plans. They do not want to follow through with opposite action or fighting against their eating disorder because they are afraid of being bloated. And I just want to say that within this recovery context, the reason that we are experiencing bloating is not because of the act of eating, but it's because of our restriction in the first place. So if we want to avoid this painful bloat and we want to avoid this discomfort, what we should do is not restrict. What we should do is focus on pushing through that mental block. Your mind is always going to stop you before your body will. And remind yourself in the moment that bloating is not something for you to be ashamed about. There is nothing particularly wrong with you. You just need time to adjust. If the bloating persists and continues to be painful, please be in communication with either your treatment team or doctor just to make sure that everything is okay. Again, we're talking about the painful bloating that comes. Constipation is also something that will come, but again, this is because the adjustment, not because of the food you are eating. You do not have to cut anything out. You do not have to change anything. You just have to stick with it. And that is the hardest thing. Because with recovery, when you go and you stop and you go and you stop and you go and you stop, every time you stop, it's 10 times harder to keep going, always. So experience the bloating, even if it's every day, even if it's every hour, even if you wake up in the morning and you are bloated, it is normal and to be expected. And many people who also have a background with restriction are simply not used to the feeling of being full. So many people feel full, which for the regular person would just feel like that normal sensation. For somebody who has a restrictive past, it almost feels very wrong, very foreign. And sometimes people in recovery will say that they are so bloated and feel so uncomfortable, but they're actually conflating the feeling of bloating with the feeling of being full. So that's also something to consider. Something that I also don't think is spoken about enough is anxiety and recovery. When you are recovering from an eating disorder, your anxiety is going to continuously increase throughout recovery until it finds a more stable place and we are able to see the progress that we've made. But as we inch with that progress, because that's very much how recovery works, is it's baby steps, it's small steps. We cannot see our progress right away, which makes it very frustrating. But we are also introduced with anxiety, whether that is body image anxiety, anxiety around food, anxiety around people. Everybody experiences anxiety in different ways. And the thing is that our anxiety can actually exacerbate our bloating symptoms emotions and feelings as well. So there's a chance that you will feel anxiety if you're gaining weight, if you are seeing any body changes, if you are no longer using your negative coping skills that you used to use with your eating disorder, your anxiety is going to increase. And what else increases when our anxiety increases? This is different for everybody, but a lot of very common side effects of anxiety are nausea, diarrhea, dizziness, discomfort, shakiness, physical pain. And so sometimes when our anxiety meets with our bloating, it's not necessarily that our bloating is actually what is making us uncomfortable, but it is our anxiety first. And it's also important to remember that this discomfort that you're going to feel is not something that we have to or can even shy away from. It's something we have to lean into. It's something that we have to embrace. Your bloating is part of your recovery journey, whether you are weight restored or not. I was technically weight restored, but I still gained weight in recovery. And that doesn't make me any more invalid or make somebody else more valid than me just because they are weight restoring. Bloating is valid for anybody in general, and also you will experience it probably more in recovery. When we're thinking of restrictive eating disorders, we also have to think about how long we've restricted, what we've restricted, everything like that. Your body was not getting its desired amount of food for a long time. And so it's going to take your body some time to learn to trust itself. And it's also going to take you time to learn to trust your body. But your body wants what's best for you. And bloating is not dangerous. It is not something that has to be avoided at all costs, like these fitness influencers say. There's nothing wrong with bloating. And this rhetoric behind never having your stomach look anything other than flat is a very fat-phobic thought. And I'm not saying that people who have restrictive tendencies or struggle from body dysmorphia are fat-phobic. That is not what I am saying. But I'm saying that when you have YouTubers make videos on 10 tips to not bloat, cut out this, don't eat past 8 p.m., that is disordered. And I'm really sorry if that's the kind of video that you expected. If you expected me to sit here and list 10 ways for you to stop bloating, I would just say that you don't know me very well yet. I think something that everybody can just stand to learn or work on is just accepting their body in different stages. Accepting aging, accepting weight gain, accepting fluctuations, whatever it might be. There is not one part of you that is wrong. You are not wrong for bloating. You are not wrong for having a stomach. You are not wrong for having back rolls. You are not wrong for having a specific skin texture. There is nothing wrong with the way that you've been designed or made. If you ever have any difficulty accepting that, then do not pick yourself apart, but pick the world apart. Does this have to do with accessibility? Does it have to do with fat-phobic media? Does it have to do with media in general? Or the way that you feel about yourself is just a reflection of the people around you and the sort of dynamics that you have viewed yourself. We are not born into this world hating ourselves, and we do not have to leave this world hating ourselves. Self-acceptance means just accepting that you can't change who you are. The important thing, or the most important thing, is to challenge these thoughts that we have around bloating in the first place, to reassure ourselves that bloating is not something that needs to be avoided at all costs, to wear the dress or the jeans or whatever, even if our bloated belly is going to be showing. Who cares? What are we hiding? What are we trying to prove? That we are thinner, that we are smaller, that we take up less space? There is no pride in that. A nourished body is a healthy body. Eating disorders are never healthy. I feel like the purpose of this video was for me to try to normalize bloating more than anything, because I feel like we don't have a lot of supportive videos about that. But yeah, bloating is normal. It is okay. It happens for so many different reasons, and you are not wrong because you bloat. Understanding this and accepting it can actually make the process, especially the bloating throughout recovery, so much easier to work through, is just by accepting that there's nothing that you can do to avoid it. So yeah, I hope that this video made you feel a little bit less alone. As usual, I feel like sometimes I ramble and these videos are not the most concise, but people have wanted me to talk about bloating, so I'm talking about bloating. Anyway, if you have any other specific questions about bloating that you would like me to answer, feel free to leave them in the comments down below. And yeah, thank you so much, friends, for watching, and don't forget to do something kind for yourself, okay? Okay. Bye, friends.